I spend my life researching and teaching people how to live a powerful life. I am a believer. I stand for the transformation of humanity. I have found my purpose. My name is Gabrielle McGee, and I am the Rebellious Therapist. So welcome to the Rebellious Therapist podcast. And today's session is it's season 2 and session 5. And today this topic is all going to be about red flags in relationships. So I also want to now welcome Ciara as usual. Ciara has moved to the Hamptons, which I'm really, really jealous about. And yeah, so welcome, Ciara. Just tell me a little bit about what's been going on in your life for the last few weeks.
Well, the last time we talked, I was in the middle of the messy middle, as I like to call it, of making a choice.
Yeah.
And it was, should I go or should I stay?
Mm.
And I decided to go and move about 2.5 hours outside New York. Start a life with my partner in a new village, new town, new job. And it's just kind of flipped, 360 on, or
Wow.
180, as you say. And I couldn't be happier. It
Wow.
was the right choice. It's brand new, but it's exciting. And what I was holding on to was something very stale and
Mm.
something that wasn't serving me anymore.
Yeah.
But of course, it felt so familiar and comfortable that it was so hard to leave.
Yes. Wow.
But like as you said, once you let go and open up and let it all in, it can be a million times better.
Amazing.
And it is.
Amazing. It was amazing to be on that journey with you for the last few weeks and watch
Yeah.
everything unfold and like you're not in a village, you're in the Hamptons and
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? It's like a village. I don't think so, right? Because what you've done, you've ended up in the most beautiful place in the world.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's
Most beautiful
really, really
place.
cool.
Right beside the ocean, right beside
Yeah.
forest, and not in a concrete jungle anymore, which can have its own effects on your mental health.
Yeah.
Out in nature now, I think it's time.
So today we are going to talk about red flags in relationships. So we're going to go through all the different stages that we feel is a red flag in relationships. So Ciara, do you want to take it away there, and I'll just elaborate more as we talk, okay?
So number one,
Mm-hmm.
the person's history.
Yeah.
So their past relationships. Do they take responsibility for their part in it, or are they victims?
Yes. So what happens in that is, the red flag for me there is if you got into a relationship, it can go both ways, right? So if they're talking all about themselves and it's all about me, 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 and I've been in a relationship and the person I've been in 10 relationships, I've been in 3 relationships, I've been in 5 relationships, and they were all terrible. Everyone that was in that relationship with me was the wrong person. They were they were doing all this stuff that I didn't agree with, and it's all about making them wrong,
Mhm.
and I'm right. So
Yeah.
there's no personal responsibility in that. That's a red flag for me because then guess what? You're going to be the next one.
Yeah.
And you can see there's no capacity in that conversation for them to take responsibility for their behavior. Now, I'll tell you a story. I've had clients who's been on their third marriage, and the third marriage is now ending. They're up for divorce. And they keep telling me, I just keep meeting the wrong woman.
Mhm.
And I love the moment where I have to say, oh, who's on the other end of those 3 marriages?
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, they don't know. They didn't know. And then they started, until we go through the process and them really looking at their behavior. And that takes a while for them to get it. So when you're in a relationship with someone like that, it is a difficult one.
Yeah.
Now, that's the red flag for me
Yeah.
because that's a narcissistic behavior, right? Then there's
I can
go ahead.
I can definitely say that I was that person, though. I was the victim in a
Yeah.
lot of my
Yes.
um past exes and all that.
Mm.
And I still remember the storyline. I spewed about why we broke up. It was all
Yeah.
them. No responsibility until I started therapy.
Yes.
And then I got to see myself in the relationship, and then I got to take responsibility
Yeah.
for my part. And so like I right there, like my 10-year relationship broke up because I can see now why it got feeling.
Mm.
We just weren't meant to
Yeah.
be. And then another
So was
relationship,
that a 10
our
that was a
values,
10-year?
huh?
That was 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
Yeah. So you see how long it took to work through to the gut feeling?
Yes.
You know, the gut feeling was there, but you kept ignoring it.
Yeah.
So how long did you think you were in that relationship what stage was it at when the gut feeling started? No, something's not right here.
I would say we were 5 years in,
Yeah.
and so I spent 5 years in the gut feeling is the ultimate,
Mm.
not no like, I knew that, but after that, I would again, make excuses and, like, see the potential in somebody and
Yeah.
not really the actual reality of it.
Uh-huh.
Our values did actually align. They did.
Mhm.
Um, However, we were just not. We had just we went from 15 to 25.
Mm.
Like we had outgrown each
Yes, of
other.
course.
We grown up like
Mm.
cousins,
Mm.
that kind of way.
Mm.
There was
Platonic.
no. It was just like, and I have no like bad feelings towards it. I've come full circle and
Mm.
still, love and respect that person and that part of my life, and I have no regrets.
Mm.
But the amount of time I spent in victim mode in that relationship, it was honestly horrible. Like
Yeah.
there's no power in that.
Yeah. So you can see
And
that
that,
like that's another part of the red flag, right? If
yeah,
someone's a plain victim, then they also will you'll always, the person on the other end of that will always be wrong.
yeah, yeah. But I was still staying in the relationship, and
Mm.
still being a victim. Like,
Yeah.
like just then just leave, if you're still complaining and this and that and the other, like that is a huge red flag. And that's kind of what we were saying as well. These red flags are for you to spot in other people, but and as you said, it's a different conversation, but there's also red flags you can look at in yourself
Totally.
in a
Yeah.
relationship.
Because
And those,
you gotta look at both, right?
yeah,
Because you could be part of the issue, part of the problem.
yeah. Well, you definitely, there's some percentage because there's two people in a
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah. So, you can see for the guy, whoever that guy was, right? He served a purpose. This is what's get really interesting, because your way of doing relationships was victim.
Yeah.
So then you choose a guy or you choose a girl that facilitates that process for
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
And that's all unconscious, right?
Yeah.
But you also continues this is where it gets complex. You're also continuing a lot of your early age development processes as a child. You just take that into relationships. And I keep saying that in most of my
Yeah.
podcasts and reminding people, you know, if you felt victimized as a child, then guess where you're doing relationships from?
Yeah.
You're doing that relationship from that space. We go into a very childlike space when we go into relationships because it's just there and where we learn how to connect from.
Mhm.
That's why, and it's very difficult for that type of relationship to go strong or, progress into a more, you know, adult relationship because it stays in child-like form
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
both
I always
sides.
said like when we ended it when we were 25, it was as if we were still 15-year-olds in the
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah, it had moved on. Exactly.
Hadn't
And
moved
it
on.
doesn't. Yeah. Very good point.
Yeah.
Right. Then,
Yeah.
if because what we're looking at today, the red flags is great, but, to move on from the red flags will be on the next podcast.
Yeah.
And yeah, so look, that's a great example, Kira,
Yeah. So
and
that's
there
kind
is
of an example of history and responsibility. And they always say to like always so one of the things when you're first starting dating is always be aware of how the person that you're dating is talking about their ex.
totally.
Are they bad mouthing? Are
Mhm.
they respectful? Are they? And you'll know then in that moment
Mm.
whether that person has taken personal responsibility or whether they've like become emotionally mature enough, I guess, to understand how a
Or they've
relationship
done the
works.
work, right?
Yeah,
They've done the work, or they're being responsible for their part, right?
yeah.
So, and it's not just X, but X is that's even a bigger,
Exes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
When you hear the sort of the pattern, look for the patterns. When you're,
yeah.
that's all red flags for me. And one of the things, if I were going into a new relationship, what I'd be doing is I'd be saying, what kind of childhood? Tell me the crack about your childhood.
Yeah,
Then you're going to get a real clear view of what it's going to look like, what's coming at you.
yeah, yeah,
So all the right questions will give you all the information really quickly
yeah, for
if you're
sure.
clever.
So that's history. Number two,
Mhm.
red flag in a relationship, which I was surprised when we briefed this, was
Mhm.
social media. So talk to me about that.
Okay, so look, the all I mean it's a modern day argument. It's a
Mhm.
modern day problem. Now I know a lot of people get addicted to their phone and to social media stuff, right? And or communicating behind the scenes, and there's a lot of stuff that they're not upfront about. That's a red flag for me because there's no, you can't do both. You can't be not committed and then try to commit because you're,
So do you mean that in terms of like they're like messaging in the background or living a
yes,
different
they're
life
they're
on social
keeping,
media,
yeah,
like essentially quote unquote cheating or what you would call it? I
yeah.
don't
Well,
know,
look,
but it's
if you're messaging someone behind someone's back, and I know there's all these different layers now in relationships where you're
mm,
just seeing each other, or you're thinking about committing to each other, and then you commit to each other, and then your girlfriend and boyfriend. There's all these different layers, but for me, I don't think any of it works.
yeah. So it's as if you're living like a double life, one on social media and one in reality,
Yeah.
which in fact we all have a chance to do because like social media is a form of escapism. It's a place where you don't have to be who you actually are. So that is kind of like, as you said, there's no reality in it. It's
Mm,
kind of a bit, it's a distortion
absolutely.
in
And
turn.
some people find their value in there in that sort of fantasy world, and set their life up in such a way that it looks a certain way that actually there's no reality in it, right? But
Mhm.
because the connection with that is how they're finding their value, it's very difficult for them to come back into the real world and then have the relationship from there of just, if they have low self-esteem, and over there they're getting some value of power and connection and attention. It's difficult to come back and just be in relationship and the mundane thing, and you know bottle down and get to know someone. It nearly occurs to them as boring.
Mm,
And they might do it for a while, but then what happens is they go off into that addiction again, into that feeling, they're not feeling themselves because they haven't done enough work to really get to self-esteem from just internal stuff with
yeah.
themselves, right? So, and then there's the people who's up on social media, and they have addiction to looking a certain way, showing a certain lifestyle, and there's no real, it's all very distorted if you don't know the game. A lot of them know the game,
Yeah.
but a lot don't know the game. They think that's the real world. Now
Hmm.
I've worked in the social media background, life 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 sort of problems with people with, and that they some of them are really brilliant at knowing, okay, this is my life, but this is my job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it's when people don't know the difference and they don't have the distinction for what's what or how it works, then you got an issue. That's a red flag.
yeah, yeah. I think for people kind of who have the unhealthy relationship with social media will find it really hard to connect in real life.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling that,
Mm.
when you start dating somebody that they're unable to connect once the phone is down, then that probably is a bit of a red flag
I would say it's a
for,
big red flag.
yeah, big red flag. I'm going too easy on everybody now.
I know, I know. It's very you're being very careful. Isn't it interesting? But when it comes to
Yeah.
social media, we are very, very, very careful of how we speak about it.
Yeah.
Even that in itself it's interesting. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
I don't want to say this, or it's about social media, and there's such a pressure to have, and we're locked into of how we talk about social media.
Yeah.
You know.
Their
So
life
yeah,
now.
I think that's flag number two. I think we've said, you know,
Yeah.
and people
Okay.
will. I
So
think people will have experienced it a lot.
yeah. And again, look at it in yourself. Do you find it hard to connect offline? Do you find it hard to really sit with somebody and, you know, be you and let them be them and like you'll know yourself?
Are you talking to me?
No, I'm just
Oh,
talking to like the people. Say, okay,
I'm going.
again, if you're
I'm
gonna
going to say I'm too
if
old.
if we're gonna turn the conversation back as well and
Yeah,
looking at
yeah,
red flags in yourself,
yeah.
if you are find it hard to connect with people
Totally. Like if it's
once you
you
put
or if it's the other
yeah,
person,
yeah.
then the issue's there, right? For the
Then there's
relationship,
work to be done before you can decide that you want to embark on a relationship.
totally. No, what we're talking about red flags in the relationship. Who's doing them? That's going to be something you got to go and be an inquiry. Because you could be doing
Yeah,
that yourself. That could be your role in the relationship.
yeah,
And it's very hard because people want a certain lifestyle. They want that fantasy world. They want that, glamour, everything. So, you know, you can see why.
100%.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, number three.
Okay, so number 3 is perception and potential of the person.
Yes. This is a big one as well for me, right? To work
Mhm.
through with couples, but not just couples, but people who are in a relationship or who's come out of a relationship, right? What happens in relationship, we go into a fantasy state where we think we're in a relationship with somebody's potential or who we'd want them to be or who we think that's there, right? Now that's a very, very strong addictive process. And it's very difficult, to crack that one unless you've been in therapy long enough and the therapist knows exactly how to move you back into reality. Because what happens is your dreams and wishes is so strong and desires that you don't want to let it go.
Mhm.
I'll give an example. I had a client who was divorced, who was separated for 15 years. Now this is way back in the years, right? But she was going for divorce because she was getting remarried again, but was really struggling to get the divorce. Now, knowing, even at that point, she knew her ex husband was absolutely not anywhere near or anything she thought she got married to, right? Because, he'd gone through all this stuff, done all the wrong stuff in relationships. So that was not a point where she was confused or had not seen. She had left him for a long time. But the moment she went to get divorced, what she didn't understand, she was actually addicted to the love she thought she felt in that relationship
Yeah.
and didn't want to let it go.
Mhm.
So by divorcing the guy who done her wrong, she was also having to let go of what she thought the relationship looked like and what she was addicted to love.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot for women in relationship. They get addicted to what they think they feel or what they think. And this is where it gets really complex, right? Because what happens in that is you're so addicted to feeling good and feeling in love that the guy could be off doing or the girl could be off doing whatever she wants and you're not seeing it. You don't
Yeah.
see who you're in a relationship. It's a very distorted process for people.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
distortion's very, very hard to break
Yeah,
unless
for
you're in
sure. And
therapy.
again, from my experience, I've been that person
Yeah.
who's looking at the potential of somebody.
Yeah.
And it's not even the potential of somebody, it's just not hearing what they're saying.
Mhm.
Like the person that I was in a relationship for a very brief time, these comments were thrown out.
Mm.
I don't think I'm ever going to be be able to commit to anybody.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yes.
I'm ever going to get married.
Yeah.
Um, I think I'm going to be alone forever
Yeah.
while we are dating or
Or
in a
while you're
relationship.
trying to marry him.
Yeah, and here I am going, flicking the hair back.
Yeah.
That'll
Yeah.
change for me.
Yeah.
That'll
Yeah.
change
I'll
for me.
change
That'll
him.
change for me.
Mm.
I literally was not listening
Mm.
to what he was saying,
Yeah.
and
You couldn't
that's no
hear it,
fault of
Ciara.
his.
You can't hear it
Yeah, yeah,
because your distortion here of what you were looking for and your wants and needs took over.
yeah. My wants and needs, which at the time were marriage,
Mm.
kids,
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
and I was willing to just create that around him
Yeah.
because that's what I thought I wanted. When that wasn't the case at all, if I really looked at the
Well,
situation.
it wasn't what was there, right?
No,
And he's been really clear with you.
he's been clear with me, and then I'm just using him to fulfill my own need,
Yeah.
want, fantasy,
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. So you can
Why?
see why such a strong hold. What? And then when he pulls away, he's telling you exactly how it is. Then he goes off, and then you're heartbroken.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Because you're heartbroken because that dream state has been crashed.
Yeah, yeah. So then that was my perception of the
Mm.
relationship and
Mm.
the situation. There was no reality in it
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah. And you see, I'm
So
going to go back again to the inner child stuff. The child
yeah,
needed love.
yeah,
So if people want to come out of that state really quickly, they got to do the inner child work.
yeah. And that's what I did.
And that's what you did. And that's why, that's why you can come out of there and look, you know, at it from a very different view now, you know?
Yeah, that's very, very interesting to
Yes.
watch and stuff. So like if you're I don't know in a relationship now and like really like I feel you should just like listen or
Mm.
you're dating like listen to what they're saying and believe them. Believe when
Yeah.
they say it,
Yeah. Especially at the start, right?
especially at the start.
Mm. If people are telling you things that, about themselves and about their belief system, about their values, about, what they want, you got to listen.
Mm,
And then if you're not listening, then wow, you know where that heads.
yeah,
It's not good.
not go down that road.
So yeah, that is another stage I feel of a red flag. That's part of another red flag that you need to be really sort of
Yeah, the
im-
perception and potential of the person or the relationship.
yeah, and also the distortion, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, perfect. So number 4 now is values.
Mm.
So everybody has values. When did I find out mine? Probably 3 years ago, and
Yeah.
I'm 32.
Mm.
So the sooner you find, I mean, they do shift and change along the way, but like
Mm.
at every stage in your life, you should be kind of aware of what your values
Yeah,
are.
and I'm not
Uh,
sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if the core values ever change,
okay, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Your core
Well, like,
values. If you get your core values, they don't really change much because it's who you are. It's your belief
okay,
system, right?
yeah,
So, for me, my value would be that, you know, that I live with in a relationship where we have a lot in we have got a lot more values or yeah, the values are more in common than not. Does that make that's really, really important to me that
yeah,
that's aligned our
yeah,
belief system. Or, it's like if it's aligned with me, then it takes away the complexity. 'Cause you got something in common, you got something where you sort of heading down the one runway, the sort of the motorway is we're heading the same direction.
yeah,
So example, if for me, if I am someone who my values is, I believe that commitment is a big deal and someone else doesn't feel like that, then that's a red flag.
yeah,
If they say, well, no, I don't want to commit. I don't want I don't want to live with someone for a long term relationships is not important to me. I like variety. I like to, be in a relationship but go off and have other partners and all. That's not my core value.
mhm,
That's that's quite an extreme example, or
Yeah.
someone who believes, in a certain religious sort of background, who's very strong and believes I need to change or convert my religion or my belief system to whatever belief system they have. That's definitely not something of my value that would match up. So that wouldn't work for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Or someone wants to change me, right? And it's not something, it's not something that's going to be of value to me or support me, then that's absolutely not going to work. That is
Yeah.
not a core value. That's not who I am. It's not a core value to me that I don't need anyone to come and change who I am as a human being
Yeah.
for their own needs. So you can see there's a mismatch right away, immediately.
Yeah.
That's all red flags to me.
Yeah. And again, if you're not listening to the values, like in that moment, if you're deciding to ignore them, that's you're skewing your own perception of how this relationship is going to go, because it's
Mm,
going to catch up with you in a few years' time.
totally. Yes.
Regardless, when if you don't
Yeah.
get your core values out in the open, like core values in terms of a relationship, obviously one would be like marriage,
Mm,
kids, all that. And if there are things you want or don't want, they're questions you need to be asking on the very first date. And
first date.
I don't know. But because then if that's what you're looking for, that's the questions that needs to be asked. If that's not what you're looking for, you're telling somebody on the first date, I want to have fun and just enjoy my life and blah, blah, blah. So
There's
you
also a
really,
second part of that, Kira. So if you sit with someone on the first date and you're really clear what you want
mhm.
and you let them know and they run away, they're not for you.
Yeah, you've done yourself a favor.
Mm,
Like you're filtering out, it's a
yeah,
filter system. You're
yeah,
filtering out the shit, like
yeah,
people
exactly.
who don't match or align with where you want to go with your life.
But also, like, what a lot of girls go on dates and are terrified to say what they want,
Yes.
and they try to mold themselves into what they think the person wants in front of them. And then they lose themselves, and then they become something that they're not, and it gets really weird and confused, and then they gotta keep that up every time they meet,
Yeah.
and then that
Yeah.
grows into this weird space, and then the
Yeah.
complications comes after that. So once you put your
Yeah.
card on the table, "This is who I
That's it.
am, this is what I'm about, this is what I'm looking for." Now, it doesn't happen a lot in Ireland. I
Mm.
don't know what we're still really, really we're really into the romance and scared to say, "Look, this is who I am, this is what I want, what are you up to? Where are you at
Yeah.
in your lifetime?"
Yeah.
Just terrified to say in case the guy runs away. But if he's running away, he's running. He's running away at some point anyway. So you're doing
Yeah.
this, as you said a minute ago, you are actually doing yourself a massive favor and cutting out all
Yeah.
the shit.
Yeah. I'll give an example of kind of at the start of the conversations, which actually ties into how
Mm,
I'm here and why I'm here.
yeah.
But our very first date,
Mm,
my partner said to me, I'm living in Montauk for the rest of my life. Is that something that you are
perfect.
interested in? And that wasn't forward. That wasn't anything. He had already done himself a
Mm,
disservice for the last 10 years, moving somewhere for somebody
yeah.
and kind of ignoring his core value,
Yes.
which was living in Montauk
Yeah.
or the Hamptons or whatever.
Hmm.
And at that moment, because I'm not really attached to where I live.
Yeah.
I was living in New York City for 8 years at that point, and I was
Hmm.
like, I never knew or like thought about it too much, but I kind of knew that it probably wouldn't be Ireland anyways.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, it's something I'm,
Offer.
open to for
Mm,
sure.
mm.
Now, a year and a half later, here I am.
Exactly. That's how it's working.
So living here.
Yeah.
And I knew that that was the end goal
Yeah.
for our relationship if it was going to work.
Hmm.
So I had to, I took the plunge. Maybe it was kind of more time, and I was like, when's the time right? Just no
Yeah.
time right,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, for an example, core value that I had when we first started
Mm.
dating was therapy. I was like,
Yeah.
like I have committed my whole life
Hmm.
to my personal development
Hmm.
and self improvement
Yeah.
and therapeutic
Hmm.
process.
Hmm.
Is that something you're interested in? And he said, yes. When the time is right that we have to do it, I'll do it.
Yeah. So then what happens there is there no red flags because
Yeah,
everything's really clear.
yeah,
Where if he had said, "No, I don't want to do therapy," and you're up for therapy, your core value is that, then now we got an issue.
yeah,
And he's saying no, and you're not listening. You think, "Oh, I'll get
Yeah.
him in there," because a lot of times we just ignore and think, "Oh, I will, you know,
Yeah.
change him, or I'll force him, or I'll convince him," whatever it looks like.
And it's such like it sounds so daunting and like huge, but it's like such a simple conversation to alleviate so much pressure and stress that could come your way if you just have those conversations at the very
Oh
start.
my
Like,
god. If you're serious about relationships, these are the conversations to have. Forget it.
yeah.
If you're
And if
serious
you're
about your
not serious about a
life,
relationship, don't have the conversations. We're
yeah,
not saying like
look, go out and have
every
go
hit.
out and have fun if you're not serious, right?
Yeah.
But we're talking about relationships and moving
Yeah.
forward in your life and making it work.
Yeah.
Okay, next one.
Next one, gut feeling.
Yes. I think this is the last one, like here, is it? The last,
Second
second
last
last.
one.
Okay. So the gut feeling part, right? So if we've done enough work on ourselves, right? And we really trust ourselves, and the gut always tells the truth. It never tells you lies. Forget about the head. You cannot trust the head, right? Because it'll take you into all sorts of complex situations, right? But the gut will always tell the truth. So if you've got, if you've developed a process where you listen to your gut, or you're in connection with that level of communication with yourself, then you can always trust that.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we know there's something off, and then we ignore it. And we've
Yeah.
all done that. There's times where even in relationships, and it doesn't matter what the relationship looks like, you get that gut feeling. There's something not right for me here, or there's something off, or there's something doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The minute you ignore that, you have a problem.
Yeah.
So I think
For
I think
sure.
it's one of the biggest sort of assets we have as human beings, and it's the one we sort of ignore the most,
Yeah.
especially in relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Oh,
I as well, like, when times get tough, times do get tough in a relationship, and it's
yeah.
not always like sunshine and
No.
all of that. But the flip side of a gut feeling for me recently was this something but there's also a gut feeling to stay as well.
Yeah.
Like work through
Yeah.
this, get through
Very
this.
good
There's
point.
there's like there's as hard as it feels now, stay and wait it out
Mm,
and and you will come to that feeling of
yeah.
like whatever. I'm not saying that that's obviously not a red flag. That's probably a green flag with a gut
Yes.
feeling.
Yeah, but also, there's enough of the core value there. That's where the core values come back. You come back to core values. Okay, so this guy,
Yeah,
you know, everything I've seen about this guy is worth working through the difficulties and the
yeah,
issues. And we'll get to that on the yellow flag.
yellow and green.
When we work stuff out and when we don't. When we run.
Yeah, very true. So last one, are they pushing you to be your best self?
Yes. You know, are you able to be the best version of yourself?
Yeah,
And do they support that? Or they
yeah,
champion it? If not, then that is another red flag.
yeah,
Because what's happening is you're going to have to start, you know, molding yourself into what they want you to be like. And then you're in denial of yourself. Your self esteem goes down, your confidence go. So that's a huge red flag in a relationship where you lose yourself.
yes,
Where, if you're with your person and he's completely backing you up when you make mistakes, or when you fuck up, or whatever way it looks, right? And he's there and you're saying, you know what? Let's get through this. Let's do this. I'm behind you. I'm here. And no matter what way it looks, we're together as a couple. But if it's
for
the
sure.
opposite, where you're being made wrong and they're losing their head and you have no permission to be, just yourself, playful out, then you're going to have difficulties there for sure. Because you've got some controlling going on, or some opinions and judgments that, it's going to be difficult.
And then you start to validate yourself within that,
You're finding your worth in there as well, which is
in there,
zero.
and that's your red flag.
That's
That's
your red flag, right?
yeah,
Because when there's one red flag, another red flag will show up as well, right?
yeah, exactly.
Oh, so I think we've done. sort of good sort of example of what to look out, and make it a bit more clear for people what they are looking for in relationships, or what's there in relationships maybe they need to consider going forward with.
Yeah, love it.
So thank you, Ciara. Um,
Thank you.
this is part one of a two-part series, and the next part of this, which will come out next week, will be all about the yellow and green flag. You know, when do you stay? When do you work it out? And when do you really get to work on the relationship that's worth working through? And it's just we want to define the difference between the red, the yellow, and the green. So
Mhm.
episode 2 coming next week. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you got great value as usual. And yeah, looking forward to hear some feedback.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Rebellious Therapist podcast. For more information, you can follow me, the Rebellious Therapist, on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can find further information on my website, therebellioustherapist.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.